Booker.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for taking so much time to endure all of our questioning and being so responsive. I just want to jump right in. I'm just back from a long 8 days overseas, going from Poland all the way to Nepal and India. And one thing when I was in Germany, which was our last stop, we just really pressed both German officials we met with as well as our State Department folks about, as we all are focused obviously on Ukraine, not losing focus on China's influence in the region. Germany is obviously now, after Brexit, the center economic power in the EU. Our relationship with them is critical, but I was stunned as I probed our officials there about how China's influence is just growing in their country. And we are not, I don't believe, just allocating the necessary resources to really counter Chinese influence in Europe. And I know you're doing a lot of things already. Your budget proposal includes funding for new initiatives to counter Chinese influence globally, such as increasing the number of China watchers. But I want to make sure that this includes adequate funding for countering China in Europe. I was alarmed when I started asking questions to find out, for example, that China Costco Shipping has struck a deal to take 35% stake in Hamburg's Tolerant Terminal, one of Germany's largest ports. And when I started asking our ambassador there, she was telling me we have actually plans to sell American property there, that none of them could tell me anything when I started probing them in questions other than the fact that they all think it would be a terrible mistake to sell the property there because it sends the exact wrong message in Hamburg that the Chinese are buying everything up they can, and we're selling property that might just be bought by the Chinese. When I pressed even further, and they could not escape my questioning, they had to admit to me that they're threadbare there in our consulates in the second and third largest cities, and agreed with me that when it comes to countering China in one of the most important economic powers, we are not keeping up. In fact, we are losing ground. And so the first thing I just want to offer you an opportunity is, why doesn't your budget reflect the importance of adding investment in Germany? Why are we selling critical property there that makes no sense whatsoever?
Thank you. And I'll look into the specific that you mentioned just to make sure that I fully understand.
Could you get back to me in writing or call me?
I'm happy
one
to.
Of the two?
Sure. No, happy to do that. We're focused on this relentlessly, including in Europe, both at the level of the European Union and with individual countries. And we've done a number of things to make sure that we not only are focused on it, but we're doing something about it. So we established a dialogue with the European Union on China and all of the aspects of its engagement in Europe that the Deputy Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, just came back from. And one of the things that it's focused on is Chinese investment that poses potentially a strategic challenge or threat to us. We have been going across the continent in urging countries to adopt investment screening tools. I've done that personally. It's in virtually all of my engagements with countries that don't have them, for the purposes of making sure that they can identify and, as necessary, do something about potential investments by China that could pose a security threat. The purpose is not to cut off trade or investment from or with China. That's not the issue. The issue is focusing in on specific areas of strategic importance, including ports, as well as telecommunications and other things, that we have eyes on it and that we have, we or they have the tools to do something about it.
So please,
third, we also reorganized the department to have a whole of enterprise focus on China, again, led by the Deputy Secretary. And part of our instruction to all of our embassies around the world, including in Europe, is to focus on and report on the kinds of potential investments.
And I'm grateful for that, and I'll probably have a conversation with the Deputy Secretary as well. It's just tough when I talk to the staff over there face-to-face that they do not seem to have the resources they need to do the work that you're talking about. And as I said to them, as Secretary Mattis once said, if you cut my State Department, buy me more bullets. Well, clearly, a pivotal country that we just watched a decade or two of terrible policy with the Russians, with increased engagement. I don't want to see the same story repeated with China. And talking to my peers in that country, they really needed to hear from us and see from us that this was a priority for us that we were going to be holding them to account and that we were not retracting from Germany, but actually upping our investments across the board. And I understand that you value this. I've only got a minute, 55 seconds.
I'd love to pursue this with you because we've expanded the regional China officer program so that in each of our bureaus and regional bureaus we have people who are expert in this. We're expanding our capacity to engage on economic issues. This is part of my modernization agenda, in part to be able to do it.
And I appreciate that. Real quick, I see this every time I travel abroad, the lack of diversity in our State Department. It does not reflect America. It's stunning to me at times where I sit in rooms with no diversity whatsoever and a large group of a state team with me. You have increased the funding for the paid internship programs. I think that's important.
That's right.
There's a $10 million in addition to the $8 million in fiscal year 2022. It's something that's a priority to me and other members of this committee. I just really hope that's enough, and I hope we do more because it's disappointing to me whenever I come back from traveling abroad. And then when I talk to people of color that do serve in our embassies, they sort of feel like I do, and Warnock, and perhaps Tim Scott probably does here in the Senate, like, wow, we need more diversity. So I'm hoping that, I know that's a priority for you from private conversations. I'm just hoping we can do something about it. And my last point, I am so concerned about food security globally. This to me is stunning that we don't understand the connection, besides the moral urgency everywhere from Yemen to Afghanistan to the Horn of Africa, the moral urgency to do something about this, how critical it is for global security to meet this food crisis. Because if not, as we've learned, and I talked with, obviously, Mr. Beasley from the World Food Program, just to calculate for me that dollars invested in food security now save us hundreds of dollars in terms of the instability that's created when we don't meet these crises. So I'm hoping that the Biden administration, in their next Ukraine package, because these are related issues, is asking for the resources necessary to meet this crisis. We know that there's probably about a $10 billion urgent need for resources to meet the food crisis alone. And I'd like you just to conclude by maybe giving me, which I know does reflect my sense of urgency of the gravity of this crisis and the need for us to put in $5 to $7 billion of American resources, especially to trigger other of our allies to join us in trying to meet this crisis, further exacerbated by the crisis in Ukraine.
Let me very quickly, I fully share that concern. This is an area of intense focus for us. We're going to use our presidency of the UN Security Council next month to focus on food security. We will be looking to work with Congress to provide $11 billion over 5 years for programs like Feed the Future. We are working right now with countries around the world to get them to increase the donations they're making and resources they're giving to the World Food Program, to the Food and Agriculture Organization. We're pressing on countries that have large stockpiles of food to make those available, not to put in place export restrictions. The President has created incentives for fertilizer production in the United States to make sure that more of that is getting on market because, as you know, that goes to making sure that next year's crops and the years after are abundant and prices don't further go up. We've given an additional more than $100 million just recently from the Humanitarian Assistance Fund to Ethiopia, to Kenya, to Somalia, to deal with their acute problems. I could not agree with you more, and we're intensely focused on it.
Mr. Secretary, I'm sure this was said, but I want to thank you for your courageous trip you just took, coming from and meeting with Ukrainians when I was in Poland. Your extraordinary leadership, in my opinion, has been a light during this crisis, and I want to thank you for that and your entire State Department staff and what they're doing under difficult circumstances.
Thank you. Senator Johnson.